Pray. Good afternoon, everybody. Bill here. Hope you're having a good week. We're having a good one here. And just want to recap from our trip in Paris, share a couple of good things from that, and then talk about next week real quick. And then Tom will come on. But I want to give an encouraging word about being in Paris for the Summer Olympics. And the encouraging word is you can preach the gospel in Paris, France. And Paris people, they listen to the gospel. There are Christians in Paris, there are Christians in Europe. And they all came up and they were excited to see us and meet us. And so for one young man from Paris, he came up and said, I've never seen anything like this. We were really the only people out there preaching primarily through the city. And there were some other local French guys. So these would be African descent. Heath, how you doing? And so these guys aren't quite like just your native born, you might say, white European. They're pretty zealous folks, but there were a couple of those guys. But we were the ones preaching. We at the Arc de Triomphe, at Eiffel Tower, downtown, and so we definitely were able to get to do it. We had a little run-in with the police. It was really more about security than preaching with an app or preaching out in the open. We passed out Christian literature, had a lot of interaction, had a lot of neat opportunities in that city, and so it's a great place. I want to encourage you, if you are thinking about going to Europe to evangelize, to do it. The European Union Constitution supports free speech. It's not quite as clear. It's clear. It's not quite as wholeheartedly supportive as we have it here in the States. But nevertheless, if you get 90% an opportunity and you just preach the scriptures and you don't delve off into preaching the culture, basically, then you can go over there and do it. And so I want to say we had a great trip over there and encourage you to go over there as well. This coming weekend, or Monday through Thursday, 4 of us are going to be, Lord willing, in Chicago, preaching at the DNC Convention. And that should be an exciting time. I'm actually looking forward to it. I hope it's a wild time, actually, and looking forward to being that, which leads me to bring on our guest today, Tom Rayborn, who's a veteran of preaching in Chicago. Let's see if we can get the system here to work. Did we lose you, Tom? We may have. So we'll see if you can come back and see how that works. Hang on a second. You can't see my video? You don't see me? What am I doing wrong here? How about that? Is that better? Keith, can you see me now? Have I done something wrong? Praise God for technology. Tom, good to see you.
Good to see you, Bill.
Can you hear me?
Is everything working? You got me up there okay?
I think so. We'll give it a shot. And
All
listen,
right.
all these things, this is why I don't want an electric car. You're driving down the road, it just decides to brake, right? Your gasoline, petroleum-driven car, diesel fuel, fossil fuel. That mine's like 20 years old. It keeps on running anyway. How you been? I hadn't seen you in a while. What's been going on?
Oh, brother, been doing well. It's been I don't know. It's been just. I guess I saw you. I was with you in January, right? Yeah, you and I and Scott, some others.
Oh, yeah. Down in Tampa. Was it Tampa where I saw you?
Yeah, that was a good time, and big crowds down there. A lot of ministry opportunities.
Yeah.
But the fellowship is always so sweet. That's one of the things I enjoy about getting together with different brothers like yourself and Scott.
Oh, yeah.
I know Scott borders on being a heretic, but he's still okay to be with.
He forces you to love your enemy, doesn't he? That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, well, I forgot about being down there in what's it called, Gasparilla.
Yep.
Down. Well, cool. Well, tell us before we talk about Chicago and stuff. Where do you live? Like, give an overview of where you live and what your typical ministry is composed of. Did I lose you?
Okay. No, I'm here.
Okay. Hear my question. Heath, are you there? Can you hear me? Let's see. Got a little problem here. I'm not sure what's going on. Hang on one second. Okay. Let's see. Hang on a second. There he is. Okay. Tom? Man. Hey, what if
Got
right there,
that?
there you go. Maybe your phone might work better. I don't really know. I don't know, man. Keith, can you see me now? And while we're waiting, yeah, really, Paris, man, it was an unbelievable opportunity. The things about being over there, and I know everybody saw the whatever they did on opening night. We were there on that day on the 26th. You don't hear all that on the ground. No one ran up to us and yelled at us about that kind of stuff. That's certainly a message at a higher level in a sense of being on the ground. So ministry was just pretty normal there on the ground in Paris. And if we were out there, people were responding one way or the other. Try it again. Go, let's do that. Tom, you there?
I'm here.
All right, we'll give it a shot.
All right.
Yeah, tell us where you live and what your ministry consists of on a typical week, couple weeks.
Okay. Yeah, I live in Alton, Illinois, which is by St. Louis, and I'm about 25 minutes from St. Louis. So there's always things going on here in the area. Everything from street corner evangelism, standing out there and preaching and passing out tracts. A couple good places that I go to that are heavy foot traffic is in downtown Clayton, Missouri, which is the county seat of St. Louis County. And so there's always a lot happening there. Been down there every week for about 5 or 6 years. So I try to go places consistently and weekly. Another place is our county seat, which is Edwardsville, Illinois, and across from the big county courthouse complex. So I'm there every Friday. But during the school year is what I really enjoy because I'm on 3 campuses every week. And the campus people know me, the police know me because I've been there just for years. And I get to talk to these young students, stand out there and preach. And students, of course, they have different reasons.
Gosh, that's so good. Give it a second. Not sure. Here we go. All right, keep rolling.
So going to the campuses during the school year, and the campuses start next week, and so that's going to be pretty exciting to get back on the campuses again. There's Cardinals games that go on, and I try to make it to probably about a third of those. And normally those are a big draw, a lot of people. I stand out there and preach and pass out tracts. And one of the sad things, on a routine basis, I don't have anybody to come out with me. On Thursday, Jeff Kirkland from Christ Fellowship Bible Church, he comes out with me. But he's a busy man, a busy pastor, wonderful brother. But during the rest of the week, I'm normally alone.
All right.
I don't particularly like. We lose connection.
Well, I got you right there. Keep going. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So that's pretty much what I'm doing on a week by week basis. I try to be out every day of the week. I used to post a lot of my, preaching activities. I don't know. I just got away from that. So I don't post much anymore. I'll post something quick asking for prayer. But other than that, I just don't post anymore. I've tried to stay away from Facebook quite a bit. I've had some brothers ask me what happened to me. I'm okay. I'm still out there just
Yeah.
about every day of the week, but just out posting like I used to post.
What campuses do you go to?
Yeah, there's three campuses I go to routinely, and I've been at each of them for many years. So one of them is Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville. They pride themselves in being known as the gay campus. There's about 14, 15,000 students there, and it is one of the most, or it has been one of the most hostile campuses. But I've been there every week, coming up now on 11 years. It'll be starting. I'm typically there every Wednesday. Another campus is St. Louis University, which is a Jesuit university. Um, Jeff Kirkland will be transitioning from Clayton to SLU, as we call it, SLU, on Thursdays to get back to that. So we're there for about 2 hours every Thursday. A third campus is St. Louis Community College, Merrimack. It's the largest community college in Missouri. It is very active. It's almost my favorite. I have wonderful conversations. I alternate between preaching and conversations, and students take tracks. I've been there every week for years. I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I think. So I love the interaction with these young students, and they're going to be the grown-ups of the future, and the parents and the influencers. I'd love to reach them with the gospel.
Well, let me just ask. I know these are. I know you could. There's a lot of depth here, but on the campus, on the Southern Illinois campus, just they want to be. They want to have this reputation. Uh, does this mean that this is kind of a? I guess I have a purpose here that everybody on the campus is active homosexuals, or they just wave the flag to just for fun? What is that? How does that translate if they make that bold statement?
Well, I think what it is, it's almost like out in society, the the LGBTQ community on the campus has a very loud voice,
Gotcha.
but it is by far just this little minority, but they make a lot of noise. So out of the, including graduate students, out of the 14, 15,000 students, who knows, maybe 1,000 at the most, and I doubt that that's even the case, would fall into the LGBTQ crowd. But they protest. They're all the time trying to get more advertisement about themselves. So you would begin to think that they're quite the presence on campus. And they used to give me a whole lot of trouble. They'd come out and try to disrupt the preaching or yell at me. They had three what do they call? Basically, they had 3 meetings on campus with administration to get me kicked off of campus. And the administration has fully supported me being there, and which I'm very grateful. But it's a public campus. They can't keep me off unless I do something illegal or immoral or something, of course.
You find that I think it's interesting because it's kind of a nationwide sort of social, appearance. The way they would like for us to all believe it. Of course, I'm not a statistician about it, but the perspective they'd like us to believe is not accurate. When you're out there preaching, do you find that the other students are what's that word? Are oppose this aggressiveness by the LGBT? It's irritating to them. I would imagine most students go to school to get an education. while these kids go for another reason. What do you see when you start to interact with these students?
You know, Bill, it's a mixed bag, of course, but I have students come up to me and they'll thank me for being there, and they identify as a Christian, and then they will apologize for the things that they just heard being said. You know, if
Uh,
they were around there for
uh, uh, so good. Hang on. Cool. Are you there?
yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, they're not. Okay. So they
Okay.
apologize for what the other students said to you.
Yeah, I've had many students come up and you know they will watch the interaction sometimes, and I try to love these students,
Yeah.
and I do love them, and I let them know that, even the ones that are very hostile. Um, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 24 to 26, the Lord's bondservant must not be quarrelsome, but be kind to all,
Right.
able to teach, patient when wronged, with gentleness, correcting those who are in opposition, if perhaps God would grant them repentance, leading to the knowledge of the truth, and they may escape the snare of the devil, having been held captive by him to do his will. I bring up that verse because that's often what I pray prior to going onto a campus, that those kind of characteristics would be real in my life, that I would really love these students and even the ones that are most hostile. And you know, the Lord has granted me much favor in these areas, so I'm grateful.
So do you find that, like, if you were teaching a class per se on this, that's kind of what I'm driving at while we're gonna on this point. You your disposition. You've told me some stories about being there. What happens? So you're winning over. You just described winning over, in essence, the friendly students to be for you. They're not going to stand up there and probably take a, make a human shield around you, but they're for you. You
Yeah.
find with the LGBT students, what happens with them? Do they ever relent, or they just get bolder? How does that begin to unfold? So if you go on the campus, what is your expectation every day? Here they come. I got to get ready. Just describe that.
Yeah. Sort of a neat story. This one girl, I'll just her initial is W, and I wouldn't want the opportunity of her name being out there, but she'll be a senior this year. From her earliest, from her freshman year, since I've been there for so many years, she used to cuss me out and yell at me and say some really bad things. Well, now she comes up and talks to me just like we've been friends all of our life, and uh, she came up this past semester and she said, "Hey, I'm taking a class in the Bible." And of course, it's really a religion class, is what it is. But she had Bible questions, which was great.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then my wife and I saw her at a local farmer's market about 3 weeks ago and
Yeah.
got to talk to her. And I introduced her to my wife, and she's just as friendly as can be. And she's a cutest little thing, you know. So what do I expect when I come on campus? Man, I don't know.
Yeah.
There was I mean, there's been several instances, many, I guess, over the years, but this one was where the LGBTQ and the atheist club were so close in my face, and there had to be, no exaggeration, at least 30 or more. But because of the noise they were making, the crowd that developed, they said, was almost 200. But that didn't matter.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, here come the police. And
Yeah.
I had no idea what was getting ready to happen. And 3 police stood in front of me, and 3 police stood behind me. And the captain of the police, who I know very well, I told him, I said, "Man, this isn't necessary. Nobody's going to get hurt out here. You know, it was just a bunch of noise. I didn't feel threatened." And he said, "We have to do it for your safety."
Wow.
So the whole time that I was there, they stood there, 3 in front, 3 behind, and then they walked me to my car. Two of them did.
That's amazing.
It was almost embarrassing, you
Yeah.
know. Um, but that made the campus newspaper and stuff like that. So you just never know what's going to happen. And I think a lot of these kids one day they'll come to their senses. I'm not saying come to Christ, but they'll look back on some of the antics that they did, and maybe with a degree of remorse, maybe not either. Who knows?
You find that there's a consistent pattern to either why they affiliate or are somewhat active in homosexuality. Do you see that versus, in other words, is it just out and out we're sinners, or is there something other pattern that drives them into that camp?
When I've been able to have conversations with people in the LGBTQ community, I'll ask them questions. How long have you been in the LGBTQ, whatever they identify as? And they'll tell me something, since I was this old or this many years ago. And I'll ask them why. What were you like before, and what changed? And I was just telling a brother about this a couple weeks ago. Just about without exception, every single one of the students have told me that they were molested.
Yeah, yeah.
Time and again. That's the story. Now, I think, and I know there's been a couple times that was not the case, but where this one student basically said that that kind of lifestyle looked attractive to them. They wanted to run with this other crowd. How long that'll last, who knows? But many of the stories that I've heard they're literally heartbreaking, just heartbreaking. And I hope, I think sometimes as open air evangelists, we develop a thick skin. But Bill, I hope that the Lord helps me as I ask Him to keep my heart so full of love for these students, and I'd have a tender heart, that I would never get so thick-skinned that I'm unfeeling toward them. These are people. These are people. They're getting ready to spend eternity somewhere, and I want to carry the gospel to them, brother. We have one life to live. I don't want to waste it. I don't want to get caught up in sidetrack issues. Man, I want to see people know Jesus, brother, just like you and others in our little sort of crowd that we run with a bit.
Right. That's amen. I was at Gay Pride once in Atlanta, and someone had a flyer and it had all the stats on that stuff. Long story short, it said like 90% or more had been molested as kids, probably something much more traumatic than that. When I saw it, it does explain the well, it just obviously I was born this way. It makes that basically null and void, and but it does explain what went on. I think the trauma of that kind of thing is really obviously way beyond what we could ever imagine, and so when you're looking for a reason, I'm asking a question, not just making a statement. How can I be charitable to these people who are so aggressive? It's aggressive in the culture, so destructive. What has to happen here for me to be charitable? And that's a big one, don't you think?
Yeah, one of the things I find is if I could talk to these students one-on-one as opposed to a group. If a group comes up and they're hostile, it's really hard to break through some of that. But if I can have a one-on-one conversation with a student, and as I often tell them, let's tone it down. I want to have a conversation with you. I love you. I'm not upset with you. I don't know why you're upset with me. Let's bring this down a bit. A gentle answer turns away wrath. And when it's been appropriate, I've let students know that when I was a teenager, I was molested repeatedly.
Oh, wow.
And I remember to this day, and the times I think about it and even talk about it, it brings back some pretty rough memories. It was not a family member at all. And it was nobody related to my family. And it was a bad situation. but I finally had to out the person. And anyway, so I've been able to relate to students and let them know, hey, I've been there. I mean, if that's what your situation was, but still, here's the gospel. Here's the beauty of Christ, and here's this one who will set you free, and um, uh, the gospel.
You find that that takes the edge off when you tell them that, like they shift gears substantially, quite a bit.
Yeah, it has, and it's a hard thing to even want to talk about or even want to remember. Um, it was a repeated event over some months by an orthodontist.
Uh,
Yeah, and I was scared to death. I didn't know what to do. I was this young kid having braces put on, and he was taking advantage of me week after week after week. Anyway, and I shared that with some students and let them know, man, I've been there. I mean, there's fresh memory. If it's old, but
yeah.
it's there, and but to where I could talk about it with a student, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, you're sort of for real after all. You're not just this pie in the sky kind of person. No, I'm not. I'm just a real person.
That's interesting. Well, that's good. That's a good story. That's good. That's testimony. Yeah, it's definitely a dilemma because it's not just anyway. It's a dilemma. That's cool. On a couple more questions, then I want to ask you how you got into this, and we'll get on to Chicago in a minute. But the other campuses, the students are sort of regular students, just typical centers, or do they present a different uh, environment, especially the Jesuit environment? What's that like?
Oh, I love the Jesuit campus. Bill, it's amazing. Most of these kids, they're going to St. Louis University, a Jesuit campus, Jesuit school. Most of them don't know anything about the Bible. Now, you'll run into a few hardcore young Catholic students. You could study for the priesthood there, things like that. And so we've had wonderful opportunities to talk with young men who are wanting to go into the priesthood. And so I always carry a copy of the Catechism of the Catholic Church. It's about 2.5 inches thick. And I've read that thing and I've got it all marked up and cross-referenced. And so every once in a while, a student will talk to me and I'll mention something to them that evidently they haven't heard yet. And they'll say, Catholicism doesn't teach that. And I'll get into my roller box or my ministry bag and get that out and just very lovingly turn to a page and say, here, read this. And if nothing else, it gives me some credibility, you know, and but it is there's LGBTQ students at St. Louis University, but it's very few, at least that ever say anything. There's a couple, but we have a whole different level of conversation there. It's always for the students that will talk with us. It's always much more respectable.
Yeah.
It's more they're willing to talk about the scriptures if they stop for the most part. And then the other campus, St. Louis Community College, Merrimack, it's a 2-year junior college.
Yeah.
And so it's kids who are basically 18, 19, 20 years old. And I have some of my most real conversations at that campus.
Yeah.
There's opposition, but it's not much. But I'll preach for a while, then a kid will come up and if I see somebody stop, I try to engage them.
Yeah.
And even if they stop for a moment, say, hey, you stopped, you got a question.
Yeah.
And try and get a conversation going and see what happens from there.
Cool. That's awesome. All right, let's go back in time for a second. Do you remember the day that you woke up and said, "Hey, open air preaching might be something God has for me"?
Sort of, yeah. I don't remember the day, but yeah.
What happened between when you never thought about it and when you started thinking about it? What happened in that transition, if you can remember?
I can remember. Looks like we lost our connection.
Here we go. Keep going. There you go. Now we're there. Oh, lost you. Okay. Frank, Heath, how you guys doing? Thanks for tuning in. All right, cool.
We back up again. Here we go.
Yes, sir. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, I was on this and somehow on associated with Ray Comfort, it was going to be up in Seattle. And so anyway, you had to, they wanted to vet you a bit. And so you had to, they send you something, you had to answer a lot of questions, and I sent it in and they approved me. I thought that was really something, but they probably approved about anybody if they approved me. And so I ended up going up there for, I think it was 5 days. And I'd been preaching from pulpits for years. I mean, so it wasn't anything new. And even standing up for the first time, I don't recall being nervous. The only thing that I remember thinking, my only concern, we back.
Yes, sir. There you go. This is good. Let's see. Awesome. There's a second.
Hear me okay? Yeah. So I went up to Seattle, and that was for about 5 days. And when I came back, I mean, I remember thinking to myself, why haven't I been doing this all these years? But Bill, I'd never seen anybody do it in my life. I'd never read I've read church history, and I guess it passed me by or something that I just never heard of anybody. I never saw anybody preaching out in the open. And I thought, what an idiot I am, that here God has given me a desire for souls. From the day the Lord saved me in September of 1978, I began sharing Christ with anybody around me for the most part, not anybody and everybody, but it was just a habit of my life to share the gospel and carry tracts with me from day one, literally. In fact, the first day the Lord saved me, I called my fiance, who's now my wife, called her up at her sorority, and the Lord graciously saved her out after a 3.5-hour phone call. Yeah. And we're soon to have our 45th anniversary on the 25th, but very grateful. But so after that, I came back and started thinking, well, what kind of places can I go to? Where can I be preaching? Because, I always thought God was calling me to be a pastor, and he laid that one to rest really easy one time. And I am no pastor. I couldn't do it. I greatly esteem good pastors. Anyway, so that was how it all got started.
I know there's two. I think there was a time when you sort of had to sort of choose, if you will. It may not be the best word, between really, sort of traditional church route of ministry and open air preaching. Is that right?
Yeah.
What led you to keep going down the open air route?
Well, that's a good question. I was in a particular denomination for many years, and graduated from their seminary. That was one of the requirements to be a pastor. And they sent me to church planter assessment for a week, and then church planter training for a week. And then they sent me to Indiana to plant a church. And when I was in Indiana during the summer of 2016, I had a real doctrinal shift that caused me to have to leave that denomination. It was on a secondary matter of doctrine, but still, it disqualified me from being a pastor. But even when I was out there, I was preaching in this little town, much to the embarrassment of some of the congregants. They didn't like that at all. I was an embarrassment to them. There was some talk behind my back, and even when I wanted to pass out tracts at this huge event, they were afraid that some of the tracts would be thrown on the street, therefore littering, and it had the church's information on it. And they were all embarrassed about that. They were trying to convince me that passing out tracts didn't work and things like that. Home, and I'm just saying, asking the Lord, what do I do? I mean, I've come this far, and went to 4 more years of seminary, and went to all this church planter training, and
Let's see. Give it a second. Larry, how you doing? Good to see you. Hang on, he'll be back. Awesome. Tom, you there? Same. I don't know. There we go. Here's the sounds. Yes, sir. There you go.
All right.
That's better.
Okay. So
Cool,
so
there
I
you
was
go.
I was in Scott with Scott Smith, and we were driving to some campuses, and he's listening to my story for a little bit. And sometimes Scott, I love that brother, and you know that, and I hope he'd be listening right now. But sometimes Scott can say something, and it's like getting hit with a sledgehammer with a towel wrapped around it. And so we're driving along, and he's listening to my story, and I remember he just interjected, and he said, "Brother, you are no pastor." He said, "You are an evangelist." I'll never forget his words. And I needed to hear that. I needed to hear that because I was waffling. Because, brother, from the year after the Lord saved me, I left for 4 years of Bible college.
Wow.
I was convinced I was going to be a pastor. And the Lord saved me 45 years ago. So that had been going on for decades. And I always had it in my mind that that's who I was, not who I was, but the calling of God on my life. And brother, today you couldn't pay me 20 million a year like Joel Osteen to go and pastor a church. I'll tell you what, give me a sandwich and a glass of water and tell me to go on the streets and preach. In fact, forget the sandwich and the water. I'll go for free, which I do. But that's what I love. That's what I gravitate toward, just souls. If the Lord would be so kind to give me more time to preach, that's my heart.
So you found, like, you realized, and I think a lot of people go through this, like the contentment, you might say, with doing, with just fully investing. Oh no, God, oh God, we're so close. So close, man, so close. All right, hang on. There we go. Hang on one second. We've got to get these stories on. I'll bring my camera up there to Chicago, Lord willing, and get these things, because this is good. You got a lot of good insight. So you basically just came to grips, in a sense, with your calling and said, all right, I see what this is, because the church doesn't, present evangelism as really an option very much. And so I think there's lots of reasons we don't really gravitate to it. But anyway, you said, hey, this is it. And then you were free to pursue that.
Yeah.
Once you pursued it, what began to happen? Like, if you were going to tell somebody, here's what I began to notice in my life and schedule and so forth. What did you adopt? New habits? Obviously, you went to new places consistently. Just describe that process a little bit, if you will.
Well, I think some things are going to be just no-brainers. One of them is, Bill, for a man to be, if I could say it this way, and brother, I say it humbly, I'm just a man, but for us to be used of God, we must be men of prayer and men of the word and men of character, godly lives, holy lives. And every one of us, from time to time, we're putting off sin, being convicted. So for one thing, just a near walk with the Lord, brother, I so desire that. I so desire it. And I have my ups and downs, But anyway, so that's one thing. But secondly, is asking the Lord, put me in front of the lost, God. Open doors. And then looking for those open doors and where the Lord might have me. And then asking him for boldness and power and clarity in the gospel, some of these things. And to where I'm not out there waffling around, but going out there with a sense of the Lord's presence, the sense of his power working in my life. I prayed for it. I should expect it. And then, I've been married, as I mentioned, 45 years. We have 4 children. We have 19 grandchildren, and we're very close. And I love my family so much, Bill. And my wife is so kind and gracious to give me freedom. She's not she may be listening. She's not a needy wife, or, she doesn't mind saying, go, just go, when brothers are coming into town, or somebody will say, hey, do you want to come out here for a week and preach? And, my wife is always, she just about kicks me out of the house, but she's very kind to me and very supportive. So that is a big help. But then just to go. And something that's so encouraging to me is many of the brothers who I met, some of them I've seen their names pop up here on the screen, and wonderful, loving brothers. And I learned so much from them, the places they go and how God uses them. And I'm just amazed. And I think, Lord, would you use me in a similar way? So many brothers out there that, man, they're just sold out to Christ, and they're an example to me. And I want to be more like, you and other guys that you're finding ways that God used me, and use the talents and the skills, or I should say gifting. So I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question very well, but it seems, for me, being able to get out and share the gospel, it just becomes just about all consuming. It's what I think about. It's what I pray about, asking the Lord to give me more decades to live. I'll be 69 pretty soon, but I want to live to be 100. I want to preach the gospel for another 30 years and see if the Lord will allow me to do that.
That's awesome. I think you find, that's what you're describing. Like it seems it's just a whole life effort.
Yeah.
You don't compartmentalize these things once you start evangelizing. I don't know what pastors do, but for us, it's all in, because you can't really do it any other way. And that's what you're describing. It's awesome. Let me ask you, I was going to ask one more thing. Let's talk about Chicago for a second. Just, you've been to Chicago a lot. Lord willing, be up there for the DNC. Just describe what Chicago is like in terms of preaching there, why you like it, what do you anticipate being there when we get there?
I've been to Chicago dozens of times to preach. I love that city. Bill, I don't care when you go there, there's crowds. Yeah. And it's like preaching to the nations, Bill. One of my favorite places has become Water Tower Park. It's right there on Michigan Avenue, and it's in the area called the Magnificent Mile. And because there's all these stores there, high level kind of shops. I don't think you'll find a Goodwill there, but it's the kind of stores I could never shop in. They kicked me out before I, got too far. But Bill, it's a constant stream of people. It's no exaggeration. I have been up there on all kind of times. We go up there routinely on Black.
So good. All right. All right. I'm back. All right, we'll be back in a second. I'm looking down. You ever come up to if you're flying a plane, you come up to the counter, somebody's looking at that computer all the time, you wonder what they're doing. I'm looking down, they got these little boxes at the bottom of the screen so we can pull things up to show. Tom, can you hear me? Yes, sir. There you go. Keep going. Okay. Keep going.
Okay. So anyway, regarding Chicago, there's people from every nation. You stand up there and preach and pass out tracts, and you'd just be amazed. We've been up there on Black Friday. We go up sometimes on New Year's Eve. I mean, that's crazy. And then stay over until New Year's Day. And the crowds don't stop.
Wow.
There's a constant flow of people. And then there's Navy Pier, which is 1 mile away. So things are pretty close up there in some ways where we go. But you're never without people to preach to talk to pass out tracts to. There's never a dull moment. That's why I love going up there when I can.
Gotcha. I mean, we don't know for sure. Do you think it'll be extraordinarily crazy during DNC weekend, or is it just, what do you anticipate?
I think you're right. I think the whole nature of the convention, let alone it's what can we say? It's the Democrats, and I've been doing quite a bit of reading and some research on the convention and some of the venues. And one of the strange things that kept popping up is the amount of press being given to the LGBTQ crowd in association with the DNC. I never saw that with the Republican National Convention, the RNC. So I think that, as Scott had even mentioned, and maybe you as well, I do expect more hostility. We didn't have any hostility at the RNC up in Milwaukee, to speak of. There's a person over here and a person over there that sometime would be opposed to the gospel and to the preaching, but not much. I think it's going to be totally different at the DNC, and we just need to seek Christ and walk with Him and preach the gospel.
2 Timothy 2:24-26, right?
That's right. That's right.
If you look on their in my prayers, I looked up just the DNC website, the party, not the convention, and their main issues are they're not economic issues. They're people oriented, immigration, free, this and that, acceptance for all, and so it's a fascinating what would you say, a social study to see what these guys do. I think it's a really interesting thing. We can talk about this forever. These guys, this group, are not the Democrats when we were younger, and there's something a little extra spiritual going on in this environment, which creates what we get to see. We'll run into it, but I think it's pretty fascinating situation. We were there in 2012 in Charlotte when Obama ran for re-election. That's when they took God out of the platform, and man, you can't do those kind of things without some repercussion.
Yeah.
And we're going to see, it's an unusual situation, for better or for worse. So we'll see, man. I want to ask you two more questions. One, tell me about the book. I'm serious. You were compelled to write a book.
Oh.
And you wrote it. And listen, writing books, I hear this all the time. Dr. Richard Turnbull, a friend of ours in London, he was president of Wycliffe Hall, the Anglican Seminary. He wrote some books. He was giving them to us as well. So, that's the way it rolls. But just what led you to write the book? How hard was it to write it? Talk about that. Has it helped you in your evangelism as you've codified your thoughts a little bit?
Sure. Well, the book is called The Judgment of the Wicked. And it came out of a time where I was preaching up at Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois. I was up there with Del Suter. Del is one of the best open air preachers I've ever heard in my life. I've known him since 2005. I stay at his house regularly, and just a wonderful, wonderful brother, wonderful man of God. So we were up at the campus preaching together, and Del had drawn this massive crowd. I couldn't get 5 people to listen to me. I'm serious. All of a sudden, he gets up and preaches, and people come out like out of anthills. It's like, where'd they all come from? And you'd almost think he paid them or something. So, Del preaches for, 20 minutes or so, or half an hour, and he motions to me, as we sort of do, sort of tag team. And so I come on over and I start preaching. And for some reason, I I spent most of my message on the day of judgment and what the people had to, in a sense, look forward to. In other words, what they were going to face should they continue in their rejection of Jesus Christ and the gospel. Bill, all of a sudden, all these verses that I'd memorized over the years began to come to me on the subject of judgment. And I sort of began to look at them. It's like turning a diamond around and looking at the various facets. Well, I began to view these scriptures from different angles within a proper context, and trying to help the people that were still listening, which was a good crowd, to consider these things and how serious this day was going to be. Well, I found coming out of my mouth things I've never said before, I guess. And so when I was done, I went over and I grabbed my notebook and started writing things down as fast as I could. And Dell came over, and I'll never forget his words. He said, "Brother, where did that come from?" And it was in a good way, Yeah. So that was in January of 21, I think, or I think so, or yeah, January of 20, maybe, right before COVID. And so I started working on that book for about a year and a half, and I wasn't really sure what was going to happen with it, if it would really turn into something. And one thing led to another, and it ended up being a book. If anybody wants a copy, they can send me a private message. I'll send them a copy for free. Just promise to read it if you can stomach it. I'll pay for postage. I'll pay for everything. If you'd like a copy, I'm glad to send one out.
In writing the book, and like in the core thing that you discovered, not that you didn't quote know it before, but the revelational part, what is the core thing in the judgment day that is so staggering to you that you wrote, ultimately pointed towards in the book?
It's a day that nobody expects will really happen, brother. I don't know how many times I've preached, and I'll get to that point of judgment, and I've had more people mock at that point. It's almost like what happened with Lot. You remember Lot at Sodom and Gomorrah? He went out to tell his to-be son-in-laws what was going to happen, and they remember the response. They thought he was jesting.
Right.
They thought he was jesting. And brother, I think one of the things that hit me the hardest in my contemplation of that great day is people think it'll never come, just like in 2 Peter. That everything has gone on the way it has since the day of creation. Is what people are going to think. Then all of a sudden, brother, here comes this day. They're standing before King Jesus, and they're getting ready to be thrown into the lake of fire. Brother, there was a point in writing that book that I was studying so much back here in my little back room that my wife came back to bring me tea on a cold day. And I was back here, brother, I was literally crumpled up on the floor. I was crumpled up on this floor in morbid fear. And I knew she came in, and I turned around to look at her, and her question for me was, "Are you okay?" Because I was on the floor, and I wasn't being dramatic or anything, but all of a sudden these realities seemed to land upon me, Bill. And as I later told her, when I could sort of process things, what I was thinking through and going through at that time, I don't know how long that lasted, maybe 30 seconds. I didn't see a vision, no angel came in my room. Brother, it was like the weight of all this landed upon me emotionally and in my mind. And I thought to myself, if I could not even handle that for maybe 30 seconds, what's the lost man going to do for all of eternity? brother, the experience of the lake of fire, we can't even conceive of it. It'll drive people absolutely mad for eternity. Eternity.
Oh, yeah.
We must get the gospel to people. We can't. There's no time to play games.
Bring some with you to Chicago. Bring some copies. But yeah, I think the thing in evangelism that I've noticed, like what happened in the fall, and it really was it's not this sinful actions that we do, it's this unbelief that has crept in, and we are slaves to it. It's fascinating to behold. You've written a book about it, how people just saunter through. It is frightening, and even on my little scale. So that's amazing. Do you ever give the book to the students that you talk to, like, hey man, read this? You need to read this?
No, I've never done that. It's about 220 pages. I don't think most students read their textbooks. So no, I've not done that yet. Maybe, I don't know. Sometimes I do carry a couple copies with me. They're excellent. They're really good door stops, and they kill a spider real good.
Oh, that's probably true. That's true. No, that's amazing, man. I tell you what, I think it's a really interesting dynamic. We'll say this. I know you got to go, but like this whole thing, you have this. I'm asking a question. You have this profound end game of human life, and we want to go out and communicate that. Yet 2:24 says, "Be kind and considerate." It's quite a contrast the way we're exhorted to deliver the message versus the severity of the message, and that is a really interesting human dynamic. I find it really. I think it's something. Once you get in there, it's something you have to figure out how you're going to bring the gospel because of the severity of the end game for the unbeliever.
Yeah.
You agree with that? It's a challenge to figure it all out, work it all out together. You agree with that?
I do, Bill, and I think one of the things that helps with that, at least for me, is to keep in mind that what we have is good news.
Yeah.
We have good news. We preach a rich Christ. Paul said that when he preaches, he said, "I preach the unfathomable riches of Christ."
Yeah.
And we take a rich Christ to slaves of sin, that they may be set free, that they may be given eternal life and have God's wrath removed, and they may be justified by faith and be called children of God. 1 John chapter 3, he almost speaks with amazement. Behold what manner of love the Father has bestowed on us, that we would be called children of God. Man, we were children of Satan. And now he's taken us from the domain of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. And so, brother, while we do carry the weight of these truths with us, we go out with a real love and a burden for souls. And there's a way we don't have to go out and be filled with hatred or sort of go out as raving maniacs, but to go out and just clearly communicate to people our love for them and our concern. And that's, in a sense, that's why I'm sharing the gospel with you. I love you and I care for you. And these things are real, whether you see them right now or not. Maybe in time, God will bring them to mind and save you. That's how it was with me from the first time I heard the gospel. It was 6 years until the Lord saved me. So, and both men who shared the gospel with me, man, they loved me. Jim Murray and Jeff Acord. I'll never forget those two men. They loved me, and they were very clear, but they were very bold. They didn't back down a bit what they had to say. And so maybe that's helpful for us. I don't know.
That's good. We can talk about that over the message. Well, we got to do this again. I hope got to get some footage up there in Chicago, because this is good stuff. And you've got a lot of experience there in working with all these people and some of the stories you've told me. So, well, Tom, thanks so much. What a treat.
Oh, brother, thanks for having this conversation. It's been a fun time.
Sure. We'll bring some copies of the books, and we'll see what happens there in the sense of what kind of crowd shows up. Either way, you've been encouraging that there'll be people up there who hear us as well. Cool.
It'll be a good time, brother. I'm looking forward to being with you again, as always.
Sounds good. Have a great day. Thanks for your patience with the system.
God bless you, brother.
All right,
Goodbye.
Amen. What a message. A lot of preaching lessons there, that's for sure. So seriously, I hope to get him to get on and share some other things while we're there. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Frank, Larry, Heath, take care. Hope to see you guys soon. Tom, thanks again, brother. Take care. We'll see you guys next week, Lord willing. Bye-bye.